The Square Ball Podcast.
Hello there and welcome to the show, The West Stand, our guest-led show that you can find on YouTube and in your podcast app as well. Guests from across the world of Leeds United, the press pack, the commentators, ex-players, plenty more of those this season. I'm Dan Moylan. With me is Michael Normanson.
All right.
I am all right. NordVPN makes me feel happy.
Is that right? Is that because you like feeling secure on public Wi-Fi?
That's exactly it. I want nothing more than that. My data feeling all nice and locked up.
Yeah. It's good when you take all your 10 devices out and you can be on the public Wi-Fi with all of them.
Why don't you list 10 devices that you take with you now while I think about what to speak about next?
5 phones, 3 laptops, and 2 tablets.
Right.
That's just what I take as the standard everyday carry for me.
Yeah, you can protect your private data.
I'm not a drug dealer.
Such as your bank details, your password, your online identity. Save money on flights as well if you want to have a look at countries from around the world, because the prices are sometimes different, aren't they, Michael? As you all know, because you are deep into your research.
A thriftman.
The fastest VPN in the world, no buffer, no lagging when you're streaming, and it stops your ISP throttling your bandwidth as well. If you want to have a look at the offer, have a look at nordvpn.com/TSB. You get additional months on top of your discounted 2-year plan there as well. Risk-free, as Nord offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. nordvpn.com/TSB, and you will find the link in the episode description box as well. Our guest today is BRYN Law, who was there on the ground, boots on the ground, commentating for LUTV on Leeds United's victory against Wolves. How was it in the stadium, BRYN? What was the atmosphere like? Home fans, away fans?
Yeah, there were both of them. So it was the stadium atmosphere, actually, we commented, Tony and I, in conversation afterwards, was not particularly impressive. I'm not saying that was nothing to do with the away fans. It's difficult for the away fans at Wolves because when you spread out like that, from one end of the pitch to the other, how do you kind of get that? How do you kind of get the unity to get the songs going? It appeared to be quite so. You had one end singing or the other end singing.
Mm-hmm. But you made this point on the match ball, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a terrible away end.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, there's quite a few of you there, but there's such a long spread that's not conducive to creating good noise, I don't think. And there would have been better noise in the circumstances, I think. You know, in a sort of more traditional away section, because it was a big, good day. The good bit from the Leeds perspective was that the home fans were quiet to start with and never, even around the goal, didn't get much noisier. And then the only noise in the second half, really, the only sort of big noise in the second half was all chanting against the ownership model. So, and there were boos at half-time. There were boos after Leeds went 3-1 up. I think maybe even 2-1 up as well. And it was all very audible.
Yeah.
So you got a sense of, in terms of atmosphere, you got a sense of a place where all was quite clearly not well.
Yeah, we've been in those stadiums, haven't we? We've been there before. You know, when it's just waiting to be unhappy. And it always felt like that with Wolves.
The halftime boos were quite spectacular.
Yeah,
just having, I mean, we scored the 3 in very quick succession, didn't we?
14 minutes, wasn't
so you knew it was coming at halftime. I was like in a proper sicko. I was waiting for the halftime boos. Like, listen to this, it's going to come.
Yeah. Shh, wait for it.
Well, it was music to everybody's ears, frankly, wasn't it? Because, you know, it was one of those games in the build-up to it where there was more than a degree of nervousness about the potential outcome here and its longer-term implications. And so the outcome at half-time, I mean, it wasn't sorted by then, but we'd seen 2 things by half-time. One, we'd seen that Wolves weren't very good, and 2, we'd seen that actually Leeds had found ways to score goals.
Yeah.
Who knew? And so put the 2 elements together. What you did know already, what we've already learned, is that Leeds can be quite robust in terms of the way they keep other teams out. So if you add that then with a significant lead at half-time, and as the second half played out, frankly, I mean, Leeds didn't do a great deal from an attacking sense, almost nothing actually. But then Wolves just didn't appear to have any kind of real clue as to how to make any inroads into what was in front of them.
It was nice to see some cutting edge, I think, at the weekend. I think
it was essential.
Yeah, that was the origin of all the nerves, wasn't it? I mean, do you get any like FaceTime with any of the coaches or staff or players before the game, or is it all post-match stuff that you get?
No, I mean we kind of bump into people on the touchline and stuff like that, but we didn't actually at Wolves. Didn't really see anybody. So we saw our player Anton Stach before the game, and who spoke very well, by the way. what a good talker he is.
I was actually going to ask you about him. Have you had any interview time with him? But I suppose actually catching him off mic is almost better because you get the real person, don't you? I mean, I really like the cut of his jib. And have you seen all his Instagram stuff? Is absolutely, it's batshit mental, isn't it? I love it. Like the lobster and the man delivering the parcels.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand any of it, but I look at it and chuckle kind of thing. And he is, well, I mean, I think he's from an interesting background. His dad's a football commentator, isn't he? So there is in the house, on his domestic background, somebody who talks about football, obviously as a job, and occasionally that does help in terms of the kind of the transferable communication skills. So he is a good talker, and I've said this before, but I'm always incredibly impressed by these lads because they're doing all of this stuff in at least their second language. In some cases, it's a third, fourth, or fifth. They handle themselves incredibly well. There's nothing more difficult. Let me tell you, I've been there. Right now, Welsh is my second language, and I've done interviews in Welsh, and it is the hard. I've been doing broadcasting all my life, and the hardest thing I'll do ever is doing live interviews in Welsh. So I'm being interviewed in Welsh. Yeah. There's nothing more difficult. There's nothing more nerve-wracking. I mean, I even set demands. I requests where I say, any chance you could give me a sense, or more than a sense, can you tell me what the questions are going to be in advance? Those kinds of things that politicians often get accused of. I do it not because I need to know the questions, but because I need time to work out what the answers are going to be.
Right.
So to give myself the comfort of thinking, okay, I know what's coming to me here. And in the instances where I haven't had that, it can get tricky, and it's a lonely place to be when you you're trying to think what the words are.
Are you basically translating on the fly?
Yeah. You're translating on the fly. So question comes in, translate it, and then translate answer, and then deliver answer. So it's a process that takes a little, a mental process that takes a bit longer. And if you're not 100% confident of the language that you're using, and you suddenly realize that there's a thing you want to say, but there's a word in it that you don't know how to say it. Yeah. Then you have to quickly come up with a plan to either say it in English, basically, or say something different.
Like Fire Beast, for example.
Fire Beast, yeah. I'd have to just say Fire Beast because I wouldn't have a clue what that was.
It was party animal, wasn't it? It was when Daniel Farker was referring to himself as a bit of a party animal.
Oh, right.
That's where the Fire Beast thing came from.
Well, that and it can lead to problems. And a lot of the time, I think coaches who come to work in England, where the expectation is that they will use English, and the reason that Marcelo Bielsa didn't do it, don't really want to go back too much down this route, but the reason that he didn't do it was because it can lead to confusion in terms of the manager. Daniel Farker does brilliantly well with his English, but occasionally there are those little kind of slight missteps in terms of the translation thing. And it is difficult because if you use the wrong phrase completely innocently, and then it gets blown out of all proportion, then you're even more nervous the next time you do the thing. Mm-hmm. And yet, actually, you're helping me out. You're doing me a big favor because you're doing this interview in my language, not in your language.
So what did Anton Stack have to say for himself, or how did he come across them when you bumped into him?
I'll tell you how it works with Anton that makes a bit of a difference here is that the rigmarole for those pre-match interviews, right? The model was kind of created around Premier League games that they dictated. PLP, who took control, Premier League Productions, who took control of the build-up to every Premier League game a good few years ago now. And they said that every game is a live game now. So that means every manager must do a pre-match interview 1 hour before kickoff when the teams go in. Every team must put up a player to do an interview in the build-up to the game. That's usually about 90 minutes before kickoff, so when the teams arrive at the stadium. And it has to be a player from the starting 11. They've added stipulations to it, those kinds of things. So it's become, that's part of the ritual and the routine of the build-up to every single Premier League game now. So the clubs have to nominate people. There has to be a good spread of who does the interviews before games, so you can't use the same guy every week. And we were told right at the outset, when I was obviously working for another employer in those days, that the PLP, this was an exercise in filling gaps in people's running orders in different countries. So if somebody had the live rights to show the Premier League in Malaysia, they knew what the model and structure was. They knew what they were getting before every single game. So they could create their own running order around when things like the pre-match manager interview would be done. Gotcha. Everybody was getting the same product. So that's why they put all this in place. There was a little bit of pushback from people in the game, but it's well in place now, and everybody understands how it works. But the thing that you're not really there to do is to win any prizes for the quality of the interviews that you're doing. It's an exercise in filling the gap in everybody's running order. So to take pressure off players who might have said, I don't want to do an interview before the game. My head I'm fully focused on the match itself. I don't want to be chatting away with some bloke in a little booth before I go out. So to take kind of the nervousness away on that basis, they said, well, the interview is going to be about the game. So we were told right at the outset, 3 questions basically on the game. So you go around, what's your training week like been like? What's the mood in the group? What sort of game do you expect today? There's your 3 questions, right? Occasional variation from that, but not very often. And so it's all very formulaic, but you can get a whole world of different type of response to even those 3 fairly straightforward questions. So Anton Stach answered my second question in his first answer on Saturday pre-match, because he was talking a bit and he referred back to the Fulham game, which I was going to refer to in the next question. So I didn't really have to ask that question. So to cut a very long story short, I can see the comments coming in, God, he's dull already. But to cut a very long story short, I only had to ask him 2 questions because we'd filled the gap. The expectation is that those interviews pre-match will probably last no more than 90 seconds. That would be my length of time. Duration would be no more than 90 seconds. The problem we occasionally have is some of the guys who stand in front of us fall way, way short of that 90-second mark. I'll mention no names, but there's a couple of Leeds players who come in at sometimes like 35 seconds, and that's including my questions.
Right.
So then there's an onus on me because there's still a gap there, which is effectively 90 seconds long. So there's an onus on me then to try and keep going to fill as close as we can to that 90-second gap. Otherwise, producers get unhappy and, the running order becomes tricky or whatever. So Anton Stach is not that guy. So he talked, and so I asked him 2 questions, and we had all with the material that we required from that type of interview from that. So he's confident, and he was very open and he's very engaging. So that worked very well for us.
It's good to get a peek behind the curtain, because sometimes people say, why don't they ask this or why don't they ask that? So it is good to know what the expectations and the parameters are.
This has been a big thing with Leeds recently. I think I read a Graham Smith piece last week where he talked about asking what sort of questions are we meant to be asking here. And I'm sure I've referred to it previously, but different people in different positions working for different organisations require different things from their interviews. Okay, so there is an editorial input in terms of what type of questions are you going to be asking. The PLP input to this was that we are not going to ask people tricky questions before the game, because it's not an exercise in doing that. It's an exercise in getting these interviews just done.
Yeah, you do that after the game, don't you?
That's potential to do it after the game. Even then, there were kind of criteria put around it whereby the majority of post-match questions would be about the game.
Right.
And then effectively the suggestion was, I don't know whether it was ever more than a suggestion, that if you've got a tricky question, like are you under pressure type question, that comes at the end. I mean, you would tend to do that as a journalist. You tend to do that anyway. Leave the hard ones till the end when you actually got something in the can, to use the old-fashioned phrase. So there are kind of, they're probably, I would describe them as unwritten rules around some of that. But then a club interview is always going to be different from Yorkshire Post interview or even a Radio Leeds interview, because you're working for different people in a different environment with different required outcomes. So the questions will necessarily be different. I mean, the one thing I always say is that there's a lot more people than me who ask questions. So if it's not covered as you see, if it's not covered by me, I'm pretty sure somebody else will pick it up beyond me. And so it will get asked, but it's a question of who it gets asked by. And there is I think the thing that Graham was alluding to in the piece that he wrote was that there is, in fact, he was more than alluding to it. He said it. There is kind of a sense around quite a lot of it now. I mean, everything's getting analysed, and I looked at our post-match interviews on Saturday, which I thought were really good, and nothing to do with me. That was to do.
But you fully stacked me there because that was the next question.
Right, okay, okay. Well, it's not very often that I kind of go, oh, that was good. In fact, it's very, very rare indeed, because most football interviews, okay, everybody, are incredibly bland, right? I've done how many? I don't know. I've done 100,000 of them by now, probably in my lifetime. And of that 100,000, I don't know, what am I looking at? 5 or 6 probably would have gone, oh, that was a good day. That was good.
Well, I've seen the ones from the weekend, and it's not to say that they're spiky, but there is something there, isn't there? I mean, we're certainly not in a spiky situation at Ellen Road, but you spoke to both Dominic Calvert-Lewin. You can see these on the club's YouTube channel, which is where I found them. Watched them last night. Both Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Daniel Farke had something to say about the sort of general atmosphere.
Noise is what they were kind of referring to, wasn't it?
So Farke addressed the parameters of where the season is heading. Are we struggling? Are we going for Europe? Somewhere in between.
That was genuinely funny, that bit.
Yeah.
When I said, you could have had 8 points, you should have got one at Fulham, and then he said, and then we were referring to the European bit. I was expecting. He said, my people are saying to me it should be Champions League, and that was funny. I genuinely thought that was a humorous response. I enjoyed that.
And what do you make of Calvert-Lewin as well? Because he feels like he's come in with kind of almost a quiet, understated demeanour, but it feels like he's got something to prove, as you saw from when he scored the goal. He was pointing to his name on his shirt.
Hugely so.
Which was great.
Well, let's be honest about this. He shouldn't really be at Leeds, should he? He shouldn't be at Leeds, or he shouldn't have arrived at Leeds for, nothing? Mm-hmm. Because he is a guy with a Premier League reputation. He's a striker. There's very, very few of these people, Premier League strikers. There's not many of them about. Look at the lad that Wolves had up front, who they'd signed for 25 million on Saturday, and who did not have a great day. So they've been casting around trying to find somebody. Where'd he go? Genk, I think he come from, hadn't he? They've been casting around to try and find somebody to be a striker in the Premier League. There's a big difference between trying to be that and actually having been it. Well, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been it and still is it, by the way. But so he shouldn't have arrived at Leeds. His next move from Everton should have been, I'll say, big club, or, abroad.
Yeah.
To somebody big abroad. So something's happened there clearly in his career, which has been, hasn't helped him. So he's proving points here, but you have actually still got a guy who has most definitely done the thing that you want your Premier League striker to do.
Yeah.
We were saying that header he scores. I don't think any Leeds striker of the last 5-10 years possibly scores that. Maybe Bamford in his brilliant Premier League season, because weird stuff was happening in that year. But certainly none of the strikers we've had in the last few years would score that header.
No, and he'd already done. We talked about this last time. He'd already done things in games prior to that you haven't seen a Leeds player do for I'm struggling to remember. Little moves, runs, kind of hold up play, winning headers. Winning most headers, those kinds of things. He'd already added those elements, and then he showed with the goal what very much has been missing: the ability for somebody, as Tony kept saying in commentary, get the ball into the far post, get the ball into the far post. And when it did happen, there he was, and then he does his thing then. Yeah. And he made that point. I'm not just good with my head. He made the point.
He caught himself, didn't he? He actually caught himself as he said it.
Yeah, and that was good as well, because I think you want a little bit of bite there with the players. I think you want a little bit of, there seems to be a sense in the world that nobody reads any of the things that anybody writes about them. And my contention would be most people do read that stuff. And if they don't read it, they certainly pick it up, because it's almost unavoidable now. So all the Leeds lads will know what is being said about them. I would absolutely contend that. I don't think they live in any kind of bubble on that basis. It's how they react to it is the key bit. Do you crumble or do you get stronger? And so Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been around a long time. He's had a lot of stuff flying in his direction in the past. He's He's a guy who likes to dress and present himself in a way that is different from lots of other Premier League players. And I think that's brilliant, because that shows strength of character for me. Others may disagree, but he has that about him, and I think he's very keen just to. I think Leeds would be a brilliant club for him to do that with, because he's from Yorkshire anyway, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, it's the first time I've ever interviewed him actually post match, and you almost expect him to be Scouse.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's
the Yorkshire accent comes out. Yeah.
And so he's a Yorkshireman,
yeah.
Right? So he's playing for the Premier club in Yorkshire. I think this thing could be good.
I think so too. I mean, it's the injury is the record is where the questions arise, but nobody's under any illusions about that, and the club obviously back themselves to see him through that and to manage him in the right way.
The test comes with him is when we get that midweek press conference from Farker, and the question is asked, any injury doubts ahead of the weekend? And he goes, well, he's picked up a knock in the last game, and people will immediately go,
there we go.
Well, there we go.
That season falls apart here.
Yeah.
And that will happen at some point, whether or not it's this week or Christmas or March, but there'll be a bit where that happens and everyone goes, well, it was too good to be true.
But you're right. There's a really interesting dynamic, I suppose, and we'll never know what happened in the grey area that exists in the middle of this. But from him leaving Everton and probably having designs on the Champions League club, and he said he turned down some Champions League football to come to Leeds, with him parting with his agent, and then reportedly negotiating the Leeds deal himself, and then rocking up at Ellen Road. It doesn't feel like the most linear path, does it? There's something that's happened there that has meant that Leeds ultimately appeals to him enough that he's saying, yeah, that's a place I want to be. I've got a point to prove. And he does have a point to prove, as you can tell by his language, and he addressed the not enough firepower accusations, didn't he, in his post match, which is what I enjoyed about it.
Yeah, that's right. So he knows what the script is around his arrival at Leeds. And yet he's actually probably got the capability, in fact, more than probably, he has got the capability to completely change the narrative with this one. I mean, he's the guy who will be in the next meeting with Everton at the new stadium, will surely be A, desperate to play, and B, absolutely desperate to score a goal, I would imagine.
Yeah.
With all the potential for the celebration or no celebration or whatever that follows from that, because he's been up there. I mean, to be a Premier League player is to be under incredible pressure. To be an English Premier League player is to be under even more pressure, because it's your audience. You understand everything that's being said around you. There's no escape route for you. And he's been up there for a long time, and it's been hard for him for a long time, because he hasn't been able to play and do the thing he wants to do because of injury. So I think if that clicks, if that works, I think that could be good.
Yeah, I predicted him for my top scorer with 9. So he's got 1.
The other thing that was really pleasing on Saturday was that, yes, obviously scoring goals was good, because that's what commentating on it is really all about, is having the chance to get a bit excited now and again. So we'd had a George Graham conversation, Tony and I, before the game started, and because he was referred by somebody else to the fact that so few goals had been scored in that. I was commentating on all those George Graham games. It was in the Radio Leeds period, and I'd forgotten how few goals were scored as well. Was it 28 in that in the first George Graham season? 28 from 38 presumably matches. So that's not very many goals at all, is it? So I lived through it. You lived through it. Yeah, well, I commentated through it. So I'm thinking, I've written up a manuscript of my Leeds United years. So if there's a publisher out there who fancies taking me up on it, then give me a call. But in writing the George Graham bit, one of the things I thought about doing was just the George Graham era, and then just going straight to the next chapter kind of thing, because there isn't a great. And yeah, in the midst of it all, Leeds going to Europe. And with that 28 goals, finished 11th that season as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So there is, if you want, all the data points to the fact that the Leeds squad building this summer has been built on the basis of the fact that they need to be good at defending, which apparently is the case. But that was George Graham's mantra way back then. And it actually was successful.
Yeah.
So finished 11th that season, finished 5th, was it, the next season, got into Europe. with a Brian Dean goal, which I remember at Tottenham, which was one of my favourites from the past.
Good win, that.
Yeah, and so that was get your passports ready. That was the little line in commentary there. So that it did work in those days. There's no reason actually nothing changes that much. Let's be honest. I mean, long throws are back again, aren't they? So it's all circular. The kind of the thinking around it. So they're back at the point of we've got to be hard to beat. We've got to be really durable defensively here. But to go back to the original point. 3 different goals scored, not just 3 goals scored, but 3 different goals scored on Saturday, which all were good goals in very different ways. And that, I think, is that bit for me is really important. There's got to be, Leeds have got to have different ways to score goals. They've got different people scoring goals. If you look down the list of Arsenal goal scorers, I was really surprised by this when I was doing the prep for the Arsenal game. What was their leading goal scorer last season? Something like 9. There was no standout goal scorer there, but there's a spread 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s throughout the squad. And so I think really that's really where Leeds are looking to try and get the numbers across. Lots of people involved in terms of doing the thing, scoring goals.
Which one did you have most fun with on Saturday? Was it Stack, presumably?
Yeah, the free kick. I mean, because I asked the question in commentary, how long is it since a Leeds United player has done that from a free kick? So I'm off the top of my head, we had Ilya Gruev, but it doesn't really count the one against Norwich because he kind of the keeper let it go in, didn't he, basically? Yeah. It wasn't a spectacular thunder blaster kind of thing. So before that, I'm thinking Calvin Phillips at Blackburn scored one up and over the wall in the lockdown period. And I can't remember another free kick that I've seen Leeds score directly from. No. So, but that sort of free kick as well, that just absolutely hammered into the top corner. Definitely can't remember another one of those. So it was a one-off. So it was so beautifully unexpected that kind of added to the...
There's a sort of free kick that Gary McAllister used to take, but never as powerful as that. McAllister always felt finessed,
It was a bit more Mel Sterland, if anything.
Yeah.
Just smacking it.
Mel Sterland at Sheffield United in about 1990, probably, or something like that.
Did you happen to catch the Match of the Day analysis of that goal?
I was in bed by then.
Did you see it?
Yeah, with Danny Murphy just blaming the keeper.
Basically saying the keeper should have been stood even further to that side, which was just, it just looked ridiculous.
No, that was...
It is mild. I mean, he's quite negative.
But you can just chip it over the wall to the other side if you
I know. I don't know. Maybe he was just caught in, this is like live broadcasting, saying something that
they'd done a graphic. I think he'd briefed him on it and been like, no, I think the keeper should have been stood on the post.
Maybe so.
With his arm in the air in that top corner.
But I did identify...
Pointing to the other corner.
but I want to say, because I did on the match ball notice the keeper's error in that as well. So I don't feel like I can sit here and, people in glass houses and all that. But it just looked to me like
if you hit it hard enough,
it goes into
that top corner. You can almost stand where you like,
and that's where I suppose Danny Murphy's comments were lacking, because that's what you want to hear from him. Like, absolute credit to Stack for just hammering it in the net, but the keeper did make an error, because I say he's shuffling on his toes as keepers do, and looks like he wants to go that way towards the opposite corner, because he probably expected it. And I don't know if you saw Stack in the run up. Stack gave the eyes to that corner. The opposite corner, and then thundered it into that one. Yeah.
A bit far away.
Yeah.
When you hit it that hard, it almost becomes like a penalty in terms of the reaction time the keeper has, because you just...
Well, if you've got a free kick taker, they are like penalties. If you've got that guy who can score from that position. I mean, we had a big thing going on in commentary, by the way. If anyone sits and watches the whole thing back, we were chuntering on about the fact that they got the positioning for the free kick wrong, because the foul was committed surely right on the edge of
we picked up on
the D, was it?
Yep.
And it was pulled right back to that position. You're going, hold on a second, you're making this more difficult now. And there's actually, no, it's fine.
That's exactly the conversation. Yeah, exactly the conversation we had, wasn't it? I said that to you, and you went, no, actually, that's probably a better distance.
Well, I wondered if at that point, if we deliberately pulled it back a bit to try and go up and over the wall, because it gives you a bit more time.
He spotted it there because players were actually calling the ref out on it. There was quite a lot of kerfuffle before the free kick got taken.
The Leeds players were.
Yeah, the Leeds players appeared to be indicating that it was further forward. It definitely was further forward. So they made the point and it was ignored, and then smash. Hey, it's okay, it's all good. But if you've got a guy who even threatens that he can do that, I think that makes a real significant difference.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how teams in future set up against that, or maybe try and avoid conceding free kicks around the edge of the area, which I think is probably a fairly basic standard Premier League tactic. But once you've seen that once, you're kind of going to be wary of it, aren't you? Particularly with how difficult it is to score and the prominence of set pieces in the Premier League.
And if you've got a free kick taker who can do that, there is almost, as we've already just meant, there's almost actually nothing you can do to stop it. If it's hit hard enough into the right place, you know, I've saw a lot of Gareth Bale down the years. He could do that. It didn't matter where the goalkeeper stood. Yeah. He wasn't stopping it, because if he hit it right, it was going in.
Just shot Danny Murphy.
Beckham and all the rest. I mean, I think the goalkeeping error for me was the third goal. Yeah. I don't think he did very well at all with the third
soft
goal.
Hands there, wasn't it?
Well, it just kind of bounced over his arm sort of thing.
Yeah.
Good defending from Wolves, though.
Yeah, I mean, we'd taken our eye off it, because it's one of those where you're not expecting that pass out from defence to go straight to the opposition like that. But that playing out from I mean, they were not good defensively, were the Wolves? And I'd been told before the game kicked off by somebody who sees a lot of Wolves, he said, our back line, he said, we got two really quick wing backs defensively, and then the three in the middle. So there was something apparently there to be exploited. Now, the other bit, when the third goal went in, was, oh my God, it's a third goal. But then also, I'm now back in Tanaka territory, because I'm now getting the vibe that it's Okafor rather than Okafor.
I think you just stick with it. Honestly,
think?
Yeah, I think you can second guess yourself too much
on the basis of such things. I lie awake, you know, in the early hours of the morning.
Yeah.
Oh my God, is it Okafor or Okafor? Is there actually a difference really between those two? There probably is if you're called Okafor.
Let's just put it this way: I don't think anybody cares about it as much as you do.
Well,
honestly, don't sweat it too much.
You'd actually be surprised.
Maybe the players do, but if you get it wrong, they'll correct you. It's an innocent mistake.
Well, we had all this. We had Tanaka, and you know, message coming from you're not doing it right, and then message from Japan, you are doing it right, and. Yeah, oh God, it's tricky, man. It's tricky. It's complicated. Also, his post-match interview, by the way, it was also really good, because he talked in that, and I thought it was as interesting as anything that got said post-match about the intensity of the games, because I had a little sense of that already from his first appearances. In that I thought maybe that the level of intensity had been a bit of a surprise to him.
But is this Okafor still?
Okafor,
right?
Yeah,
because I think it's probably applied to Stack as well a little bit in the first couple of games where at times he's been caught or whatever, and it takes a little bit of time to get up to speed.
Well, and absolutely, the fact that Okafor then got substituted was probably because he was knackered. Yeah, right. And he talked about in the interview afterwards. That's a good one to go and look at, to be honest with you, because I think again it's another insight into the development of what's happening there currently. In that he talks about how good the Premier League is, and he says I can say it now. So I got criticised a little bit in that I did the interview when he arrived, when he signed for the club. I don't know whether it was that interview or one of the other ones, but somebody suggested that I should be asking them, compare your league that you've just come from with the Premier League. I think it was his, because I think it was a Serie A thing. And my response to that would be, it's actually very difficult to do that for anybody before they've actually played in the thing. You do that after they've played in the thing, not before they play in the thing. So that's where I thought that Noah's interview was interesting on Saturday, because he started to make that comparison, and he said, I think he used the phrase Premier League best in the world, and he did that now having seen it. And I think that was, well, it was quite explicit. That referred to a lot about the intensity, the physicality of the games, and how that's new. That bit's new. So all the guys coming in, and that's the guys on the bench as well who we haven't really seen yet. That's the thing that they've got to learn most. They're all good. They're all good to very good footballers, but if they can't cope with the intensity, the physicality, and the mental pressure of playing at that level every week and no dips, then that's where the challenge really lies. And
it's every week with no dips, but it's 90 minutes every time with no dips.
Yeah.
Because if you do, as we saw with the goal we conceded, you get punished. I think Longstaff is actually tracking the midfielder who gets past him, but just hesitates just for half a second and then he's gone.
He's gone, exactly. And that's a central defender, by the way, as well, who's playing in that position for Wolves.
Yeah.
Out of position in midfield. So, yeah, I've always maintained, I've been around quite a lot of clubs. I remember Bradford City getting promoted to the Premier League, and I covered them a lot in those days because it was in my in the Sky time, so I was there all the time. So first season, obviously they hung on in the final game of the season, and then second season they just collapsed, because I think the thing that I saw most there was that the one thing that actually catches up with everybody in the Premier League is the mental pressure. So the physical pressure is one big side of it, because you've got to perform at your peak every week, but it's that staying switched on for, well, now it's not even 90 minutes, is it? Now it's 98, 99, 100 minutes.
Unless you're Liverpool, of course, at home.
Well, that's where all the games up until the weekend they'd won in the final 8 minutes or something, hadn't they? Or something mad like that.
So I'm just referring to Jack Grealish's moans about. It was 3 minutes added on.
That's
wasn't
right.
It?
Yeah, that was. I agree
which hasn't
with him.
happened for like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that was a mad one. But the last bits of the game are as important as the first bits of the game. In fact, probably more important, because you can win a game right at the end or lose it. So these lads have all got to realise that we play the game in this way, where you are. Something else Okafor mentioned is the up and down bit. So you saw him after he scored the goal. He was back in his own penalty area shortly after, defending. I think he put the ball out for a corner. That's the bit. That's the other bit that you gotta do.
Yeah,
you can't sit on your laurels and go, "I've just scored a goal. How good am I?" By the way, you've got to then chase back when your wing back's racing up the other end, and you have to do that, because if you don't do it and they score a goal, then you're in trouble.
It certainly strikes me as that, like, having done it before, when we came back up to see the difference with it, because we've been out of it for 16 years. There was very much a sense of, bloody hell, you cannot switch off for a second, and all these beefcakes will just knock you off the ball given half a chance. It is something, isn't it? For anybody who hasn't spotted that difference, I've started to spot it, and you're like, yeah, I see exactly what they mean about it being the hardest league in the world.
The amount of times as well you look at positions that were traditionally not where big blokes were, but like Fulham the other week when they've got Bassey and Iwobi on the wing. These are both like really, really chunky men that you're trying to play against. It's not the case where you can get by on a bit of technical ability, or you can get by on being slightly quicker than people. You've got to kind of have a bit of everything across the team, and it's not that everyone has to be big and everyone has to be good in the air and quick, but you need a good spread of it through the team. Otherwise, you do get run through. And we saw it last time around in the Premier League when we were trying to get by on a midfield of Mark Rocker, who just chased shadows all day and sometimes didn't even chase them. He just vaguely followed them. And Weston McKennie was clearly not physically fit enough to do it either. And we just got walked through time and time again. And having, as much as you're saying, Longstaff was, he kind of got the wrong side for tracking their goal.
He covers ground, doesn't he?
He covers ground and he gets stuck in there all the time. And the amount of times him and, in fact, at one point in the second half, it was Longstaff took out Ampadu because they were both, They were both sliding in for stuff. But like just the bodies on the line stuff that it felt like we did at the weekend, which I feel if you contrast it with the end of our last time in the Premier League, it feels very different.
And that's, but if you think about it, I've kind of likened it in the past to playing every week. You're playing a kind of like a cup final. That's the kind of the lot of the newly promoted team. So every win is significant. Every game is incredibly significant. Not
a Leeds United Cup final, let's just be clear. Cause
the record. Certainly not a playoff final for sure anyway. But so there isn't a week where you can go, actually, I think these lot are rubbish, by the way. We're going to be all right here.
Because we saw it in the Championship. We knew there were certain games in that Championship at home, like Plymouth coming to Ellen Road.
Yeah.
You don't ever want to say it's in the bag, but you can go into that.
Barring something calamitous. Well, you've got the players are better than their players.
I was going to say, well, let's look at it this way. The bookies are rarely wrong, and they make a lot of money for a reason. So it was often reflected in the odds, wasn't it? In the Championship, you would get, and I'm doing air quotes, easy games. You just would sometimes because the gap was so big. Yeah.
We'd be like 1-8 on or something in home games, which
that's mad.
It seems almost daft in a 2-horse race, but then the games are playing, you go, no, fair enough.
Yeah, well, that's it, and that's completely flipped this season. I mean, it's not quite as dramatic as that yet, and people are still looking to see what signs they can see. What are Leeds United? They're making that assessment, but you have to be absolutely at your peak every single game, and it is a long season.
Well, we saw, didn't we? Just to give the example of the shoe being on the other foot at Arsenal, we were nowhere near them.
No.
You could see the gap in quality there, and we weren't at the races that day. And it was no surprise that we came away from that with an absolute hiding.
But then Fulham, much more. Should have taken a point. God, could have been talking about Champions League now, but should have taken a point at Fulham because it was very resilient. It was unspectacular, and if you then, I watched Fulham or bits of Fulham Brentford yesterday, was it? And Fulham looked much better side in that than they did against Leeds United. I didn't see much from Fulham. There were a couple of Wilson looked good, to be fair, but I didn't see much from Fulham in that game. But then against Brentford, very much did. So that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
Well,
that's a good sign.
Mirrors the Everton and Newcastle games. I know both had injuries and players missing, suspensions, whatever it might have been. But even still, you can only play what's in front of you.
We've had players missing.
Yeah, but we've played well we've controlled large elements of 4 out of the 5 games. Yeah, so there's plenty to be encouraged by.
Had we got the point against Fulham, we'd have actually had an identical start to last season, wouldn't we? We'd have had 2 draws, 2 wins, and a defeat. Right. Admittedly, the defeat was it was the Solomon slip that led Burnley, whereas the defeat was pretty comprehensive this time, we'd have to say.
So we're going to win it with 100 points.
It's possible. Yeah. Probably 80. I mean, you're a few games, so you've got to adjust it. You've got to adjust it.
We're still only ever, this, we're only ever 72 hours away from the next crisis kind of thing. I also watched Bournemouth, because that's what I do now. The ability is there to watch
work.
Yeah, or by way of prep. That's what I tell the missus anyway. I'm watching football again, aren't I? Yes, it's prep.
Yeah. It is work. So
it is work. Yes, I'm taking notes whilst I sip my can of beer. So I watched Bournemouth and that game against Newcastle, which was dreadful, by the way. You saw 2 well set up sides. Newcastle, who are obviously still below Leeds United in the table, by the way, they look really well set up, but there's not an awful lot there that you look at and go, there's something a bit different in terms of the quality levels. I didn't see it anyway in the 2 games of theirs I've watched now.
They've scored 3 goals, Newcastle, in their 5 games.
You could kind of see that, and they've spent an awful lot of money on the guy. Obviously, they lost a really good guy up front, which is the way it works in the Premier League. But they've spent an awful lot of money on somebody to try and replace him. But it's kind of quite easy to spend an awful lot of money. It's much more difficult to actually find somebody who provides value for that expenditure.
Yeah, interesting looking at Bournemouth's record as well as we head towards that one.
Well, they're 4th, aren't they?
Yeah, they are 4th, but they've only scored 6 goals and they've conceded 5. So they narrow wins.
They didn't look like scoring much yesterday either. So I wouldn't expect, remind me of this on Saturday evening, but I wouldn't expect a kind of high-scoring goal bonanza.
Like the 4-3?
At Ellen Road. No, exactly. Wow. I would expect something a lot more kind of tactical and we could use the word dour than that maybe, because
I'm loving our dourness this year.
Dour is the starting point for all of this.
In the Premier League, isn't it? It's to be competitive, and if it is a dour game, it means you're competing. Yeah. Otherwise, you're losing 5-0 at Arsenal.
Yeah, and that's almost the only alternative. When you're at a certain level. Yeah. So you've got to learn to be that thing. You've got to learn to be dour, which should suit all of us fairly well, shouldn't it? Hey?
From Yorkshire, so of course I am. Yeah. BRYN, thank you. Do it again in a few weeks, and I don't know. I'm sort of quietly enjoying this so far.
It's a very small data set, isn't it? So far, so you're very. I think we're all very up and down at this moment.
Well, I'm the opposite. I'm
more than usual
because it's early in the season. I'm trying not to get too high or too low. Like Arsenal was a proper.
Listen to you, Daniel Farker.
It was a proper kick in the nuts. But I'm trying to learn from.
He's talking about.
No, I'm trying to learn from absolutely putting myself through the ringer all last season.
You never learn.
No, dude, this is me. This is me evolving.
No, we won this week.
This is me evolving.
That's happened.
So
we won this week, and that's it.
So we won.
There's no more or less than
that. And I feel happy about that. If we take a pasting against Bournemouth, I'll be unhappy, but
Farker outfold the club. That's what you're saying.
Shut it all down. Enjoy that final interview with him at the weekend.
You know the way this goes. We all remember Melier last year against Swansea and the little cry you had. Actually, while we're on goalkeepers, actually, is Darlow our first choice goalkeeper now? Well,
let's put it this way.
In the building.
I think he definitely starts the next game, and I think Perry will be fit if he isn't already. Because he's been good, and his goodness manifested itself in in less than spectacular ways in a way on Saturday, but just, I think Tony used the phrase, decision-making. Kick it, what am I going to do with this now? Am I kicking this short or am I kicking it long? It's going long. This one's going long. Right things, right times, attacking crosses, and got something on pretty much everything that came into the penalty area, and a couple of good saves in the midst of it. Not as spectacular as the brilliant saves that he made against Fulham, but yeah, I think he's to be dislodged now.
Which is a little bit like Strauch at centre half, because Biel's not had his chance yet.
No,
so.
But unfortunately, that's the way it works. You arrive at a new club and you get injured, and then somebody else steps up, because that's what you're there to put pressure on them to get better. They step up and meet the mark. You got to wait. So the fact that Biel maybe can't get in, or Bornau can't get into the team, is actually a good thing, because it means the guys in front of them are playing well. Yes,
and let's hope for another thriller-minute game at the weekend.
I don't need thriller-minute. I'm with you on this one.
Do you just need a moment, BRYN? Is that what it is? Just a nice moment.
A nice moment's great, but I'm looking bigger picture here, and every point in the Premier League is precious.
Yeah.
And so if they come out of the game against Bournemouth with another one of those, which keeps the team ahead of the curve on the 1 point per game kind of basis that we are rationalizing, is that's going to be enough to keep the team up, roughly, probably, maybe not. But if you're looking round about that, they're still at that level. They're still just ahead on that basis. So I'll actually, going back to those, I did the George Graham era. So, I mean, I got through that one okay.
Yeah, I mean, on the basis of the weekend, and as I said, I'm not emotionally erratic, I think we're never going to lose again.
Seems likely.
Yeah. Are you one of Daniel's friends who's talking about the Champions League to him? Are you one of those people?
I'm in his ear all the time. BRYN, thank you very much. We'll do it again soon, yeah?
Yep. Thank you.
The Square Ball Podcast.